My name is Emily Harper, and until this morning, I was the marketing director of the most successful division at Coastal Horizons Tourism, a company based in Charleston, South Carolina. I had spent 7 years building a team that drove record-breaking tourism campaigns for the Southeast region. That Monday, I arrived at the office early, after taking 3 days off. I had been on approved bereavement leave to attend my grandmother's funeral in Savannah, Georgia. The Coastal Horizons office was in a sleek building downtown, with tall windows overlooking the Ashley River. The morning light streamed in, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic on the Ravenel Bridge. I sat at my desk, surrounded by personal touches, a seashell paperweight my team gave me for my birthday, a framed photo of us at a tourism expo in Atlanta, and a stack of thank you cards from colleagues I'd mentored. I opened my laptop and saw an email from my direct supervisor, Ryan Carter. The subject line read, "Termination Notice." The message was curt. It said I needed to clear my desk by the end of the day. It said Human Resources would handle my exit paperwork. It said the company needed people who prioritized work over personal matters. I stared at the screen. My grandmother passed away a week ago. Her funeral was 3 days ago. According to Ryan, attending her funeral was like choosing a social event over my job. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into Ryan's office demanding answers. I looked around. 7 years of my life could fit into a small box. The email attached a formal termination notice, signed by Ryan, stating I had failed to maintain adequate presence during a critical operational period. He had approved my leave last week. I took a screenshot of the email with my phone and forwarded it to my personal account. I shut down my laptop and started packing. I wrapped the seashell paperweight in tissue paper. I tucked the photo and cards into the box. As I packed, other employees began arriving. Megan from sales was the first to notice. She asked what was going on. I told her I'd been fired. She asked why. I said taking approved leave for my grandmother's funeral showed a lack of priority for work. Megan's face twisted in shock. She asked if I'd spoken to Sarah Mitchell, the regional manager. I said no. I said I wouldn't fight it, but I wouldn't forget either. By 9 o'clock, my core team had gathered around my desk. There were 6 of them: Nathan, Lauren, Tyler, Jessica, Sophie, and Ethan. Nathan, our data analyst, looked furious. Lauren, our international campaign lead, had tears in her eyes. They all stared at me, stunned. Lauren said I couldn't leave. She said we had a major campaign launch with a Canadian client next week. She said no one knew the strategies like I did. I finished taping up my box. I said Ryan should have thought of that before firing me for attending my grandmother's funeral. My words hung heavy in the air. My grandmother had been gone a week. The dirt on her grave was still fresh. Now I felt this betrayal from a company I'd poured my heart into. Ryan appeared behind us. His voice was sharp. He said everyone needed to get back to their desks. He said there were deadlines to meet. No one moved at first. Ryan raised his voice. My team finally scattered, each giving me a sad look as they left. Ryan approached me. He lowered his voice. He said this could have been handled discreetly if I'd waited until the end of the day to pack. I met his gaze. I said discretion like the kind he showed by firing me via email after approving my leave. His jaw clenched. He said business needs change quickly. He said Coastal Horizons needed people who understood priorities. He said my grandmother's passing was unfortunate. I cut him off, my voice icy. I told him not to finish that sentence. I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Then he adjusted his tie and said HR was waiting for me. I said he shouldn't worry. I said I wouldn't make a scene. I said he should remember this moment. I said it might matter later. I grabbed my box and walked to HR. The office was stark, with white walls and minimal decor. Rachel Evans, the HR rep, looked uneasy. She said she was sorry. She gave me my exit papers. They were standard, 2 weeks' pay, a non-disparagement clause, a reminder of my non-compete agreement. I couldn't work for direct competitors for 6 months. I asked if she knew why this happened. She said it was sudden. I showed her the email. She said she needed to check with the legal department. She asked me to wait. I looked out the window while she was gone. I could see the Ashley River, its waters calm under the morning sun. My grandmother loved that river. She used to take me crabbing there when I was a kid, teaching me patience as we waited for the lines to tug. Rachel returned. She said South Carolina was an at-will employment state. She said the company could do this. I said I understood. I signed the papers. I said Coastal Horizons could do what it wanted, just like I could. As I left, my team watched me from their desks. I gave them a faint smile. Outside, the September air was warm and humid. I put my box in the trunk of my car and sat in the driver's seat. My phone buzzed with messages. Nathan said it was unfair. Lauren asked if I was okay. Tyler called Ryan a jerk. They were more than coworkers. They were my work family. I started the car. A plan began forming in my mind. I wouldn't fight Coastal Horizons directly. I wouldn't sue. I'd be patient, like my grandmother taught me. The river keeps flowing, but the tides turn in time. My phone rang. It was Greg Sullivan, the CEO of Palmetto Travel Group, Coastal Horizons' biggest competitor. He'd been trying to recruit me for months. It was time to call him back. The Palmetto Travel Group offices were in a vibrant building in Charleston's historic district. They were different from Coastal Horizons, open spaces, colorful murals, and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the cobblestone streets. Greg Sullivan greeted me with a firm handshake. He was a tall man with a salt and pepper beard and a warm smile. He said he'd been hoping I'd call. He said he didn't expect it to be under these circumstances. Word spread fast in our industry. Greg knew about my firing, though not the details. I told him everything as we sat in a conference room, showing him Ryan's email. He said it wasn't just poor management. He said it was cruel. I said Coastal Horizons always put profits over people. I said I never thought I'd be the one to suffer for it. Greg leaned forward. He said he wanted me on his team. He said Palmetto was expanding its Southeast operations. He said they needed someone with my skills. He offered me the role of Director of Strategic Growth. It was a big step up from my position at Coastal Horizons, more responsibility, more authority, better pay. I asked about my non-compete. He grinned. He said their legal team had reviewed it. He said it was too broad and likely unenforceable. He said they'd cover any legal costs if Coastal Horizons tried to fight it. I said I needed to think about it. He said to take the weekend. He said we could talk specifics on Monday. That evening, I met Nathan and Lauren at a quiet oyster bar near Folly Beach. They arrived together, their faces a mix of worry and frustration. Lauren asked how I was holding up. I said I was okay. I said it had been a tough week, but I'd find my way. Nathan scoffed. He said Ryan was an idiot. He said the office was a mess. He said no one could find the files for the Canadian campaign. He said my system access hadn't been reassigned. I said that was Ryan's problem now. Lauren leaned in. She said it was more than that. She said people were talking, not just our team. She said everyone was upset about how I'd been treated. I hadn't expected that. Nathan said I was respected. He said it wasn't just our team who felt this way. He said Ryan's actions scared people. He said if they did this to me, their best director, what would they do to others? Lauren nodded. She said Sarah had been asking questions. She said the regional manager seemed concerned. I said that was good. My phone kept buzzing with messages from the team. They shared stories of chaos, frustration, and anger at management. Coastal Horizons was already feeling my absence. Nathan asked what I was going to do. I hesitated. I said I had an offer from Palmetto Travel Group. Their eyes widened. Lauren said non-compete agreements weren't always enforceable. She worked with contracts and knew the laws, especially since I was fired without cause. I said Palmetto's legal team agreed. I said it was still a risk. Nathan's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. He said Ryan had called an emergency meeting for Saturday morning. He said Ryan had never done that before. Lauren explained that the Canadian campaign was due Monday. She said no one could decipher my analysis files. I smiled faintly. Those files were on the company server, but my organizational system wasn't obvious to others. I hadn't meant for it to be an issue. I stood to leave. I said I had an early appointment tomorrow. Nathan caught my eye. He asked if Palmetto was hiring, hypothetically speaking. I looked at them both. I said, hypothetically, yes. They were expanding fast. The look they exchanged told me everything. I knew what they were thinking. The next day, Saturday, I met with Daniel Brooks, an employment lawyer a friend recommended. His office was in a quaint building near the Battery, with views of the harbor. It was small, with bookshelves and framed law degrees on the walls. I explained my situation, showing him the email and termination notice. He said it was a clear case of wrongful termination. He said firing someone for taking approved bereavement leave could be argued as a breach of good faith. I said I didn't want to sue. I said I just needed to understand my options with the non-compete. He reviewed it carefully. He said it was overly restrictive. It barred me from working for competitors within a 300-mile radius for 6 months. He said that was like telling me to leave the industry or move. I asked if it was enforceable. He said in South Carolina, it was questionable, especially given how I was fired. He said courts don't usually enforce non-competes when the employer acts in bad faith. He asked what my plan was. I said Palmetto Travel Group had offered me a position. He said Coastal Horizons would have to prove I was causing them real harm by working there. He said since they fired me, that'd be tough. He said to proceed with caution but not let the non-compete stop me from earning a living. Over the weekend, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My team kept messaging me. The Saturday meeting had been a disaster. Ryan was demanding everyone take on extra work to cover my absence, with no additional pay. They'd found the Canadian campaign files, but no one understood my analysis methods. By Sunday night, I'd made my decision. Monday morning, I called Greg Sullivan. I said I accepted his offer. I said I had one condition. I asked that if my former Coastal Horizons colleagues applied to Palmetto, they'd get a fair shot. He said absolutely. He said if they were half as talented as me, they'd be a great addition. That afternoon, I signed my contract with Palmetto Travel Group. I was the director of strategic growth. The salary was 40% higher than at Coastal Horizons, with better benefits and a signing bonus. As I left the offices, I checked my phone. I had 6 new messages, one from each core team member. They all wanted to meet privately. I felt a wave of relief. I knew I wasn't alone. Tuesday morning, I met them at a small coffee shop in Mount Pleasant. They arrived one by one: Nathan, Lauren, Tyler, Jessica, Sophie, and Ethan. We sat at a corner table. Tyler spoke first. He said Coastal Horizons was falling apart. He said Ryan was micromanaging everyone. He said Sarah was putting pressure on him. He said clients were asking questions. Lauren added that the Canadian client wanted to know why I wasn't handling their campaign. I listened as they shared stories of chaos and frustration. Nathan said they'd heard I took a job at Palmetto. They all looked at me. I said news travels fast. Lauren said they wanted to come with me. The others nodded. I studied them. I said they had good jobs at Coastal Horizons. I said they were secure positions. I asked if they were sure they wanted to take the risk. Sophie said there was no security. She said if they fired me for attending my grandmother's funeral, no one was safe. I said Palmetto was hiring. I said I couldn't promise anything. I said they'd need to apply formally. Ethan said they already had. He pulled out printed confirmation emails. All 6 had applied yesterday. I was surprised. They said they trusted me. They said where I went, they'd go. I felt gratitude and a sense of vindication. I said I'd make some calls. I stood to leave. I knew this was just the beginning. The following Monday, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. It was Sarah Mitchell, Coastal Horizons regional manager. She said we needed to talk. I greeted her calmly. I asked what I could do for her. She said she'd received 6 resignation letters, all from my former team, all effective immediately. She asked if I could explain. I said I didn't work for Coastal Horizons anymore. I said I didn't know what explanation she wanted. She said they were all going to Palmetto, where I was now a director. She said it didn't look like a coincidence. I said people make career decisions for many reasons. I said she should ask Ryan why his top team was leaving en masse. She said this was about my firing. She said she'd reviewed the situation. She said Ryan didn't consult her before letting me go. She said she wouldn't have approved it. I said that was between her and Ryan. I said I was surprised a regional manager wasn't involved in firing a director. She sighed. She said Ryan claimed it was an urgent performance issue. She said she trusted his judgment. She said that was a mistake. I stayed silent, letting the pause stretch. Sarah spoke again. She said she'd offer me my job back, with a 10% raise and a formal apology. She said they needed my expertise. She said the Canadian client was threatening to leave. I thanked her for the offer. I said I'd already accepted another position. She said they'd match my new salary, plus 15%. I said it wasn't about the money. She asked what it would take. She said losing 6 key employees was devastating. I said it would take a time machine. I said it would take going back to when my grandmother died and Coastal Horizons showing basic human decency instead of punishing me for grieving. She didn't respond. I said I had to go. I said I was starting my new job and didn't want to be late. She mentioned my non-compete. I said her legal team could contact mine. I said they might want to review the circumstances of my firing first. I hung up and drove to Palmetto's offices. I arrived early. Greg met me in the lobby. He said they were considering all 6 of my former colleagues. He said their resumes were impressive. He said interviews would start Wednesday. I thanked him for giving them a fair chance. He said they were top talent. He said Coastal Horizons' loss was Palmetto's gain. I felt at peace. I knew my team would be okay. 2 days later, I got a call from Rachel Evans in Coastal Horizons HR. She said she shouldn't be telling me this. She said Ryan had been placed on administrative leave pending review. She said Sarah was investigating management practices, especially around bereavement policies. I said that was good to hear. She said the board was involved now. She said losing an entire team to a competitor had raised red flags. She said they were reviewing all terminations from the past year. By Friday, all 6 of my former team members had received and accepted offers from Palmetto. We met for dinner to celebrate at a seafood restaurant on Shem Creek. We raised our glasses. Lauren toasted to new beginnings. Nathan added a toast to me, for showing them what real leadership looked like. I felt grateful. The next week, I received a formal letter from Coastal Horizons. They acknowledged my wrongful termination and offered a settlement to avoid litigation. I accepted, not for the money, but for the admission they were wrong. That same day, the Canadian client signed with Palmetto, bringing their business to us after learning their preferred team was now with me. My grandmother taught me to be like the tides, steady, patient, inevitable. It had worked. 3 months later, I stood in Palmetto's largest conference room, presenting our quarterly results to the executive team. The numbers were clear: 32% growth in our division, 5 major client acquisitions, 3 of them former Coastal Horizons clients, and efficiency improvements that cut costs by 20%. Greg praised me. He said my team and I had exceeded every expectation. I said the credit belonged to my team. I said they'd been incredible. After the meeting, I returned to my office. My 6 team members were waiting with a cake. I asked what it was for. Nathan said it had been 3 months since we all left Coastal Horizons together. He said we were celebrating our Independence Day. I laughed. I said they were ridiculous. Lauren said everyone was happy. She said everyone was thriving. It was true. Each of them had grown in their new roles. They had more autonomy, better resources, and were finally recognized for their work. Most importantly, they were valued as people, not just as output machines. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Coastal Horizons Tourism announced a restructuring after losing major clients. Tyler said they'd lost a big Florida client last week. He said that was 18% of their Southeast revenue. Jessica added that Ryan was gone. She said he'd cleared out his office on Friday. Sarah was trying to salvage what was left. I didn't feel joy at Coastal Horizons' struggles. I felt justice. The company wasn't failing because we left. It was failing because its leaders built a culture where people were disposable, where attending a grandmother's funeral was seen as a lack of commitment. I raised my glass of water. I said we should toast to Coastal Horizons. I said I hoped they'd learn that a company is only as strong as how it treats its people. Sophie added a toast to me, for showing them we deserved better. 6 months later, I got a lunch invitation from Sarah Mitchell. She'd left Coastal Horizons and joined a consulting firm focused on workplace culture. We met at a quiet cafe on King Street. Sarah looked different, more at ease. She said she wanted to apologize properly. She said she wasn't directly responsible, but she enabled the environment that made it possible. She said after my team left, everything fell apart. She said the board hired external consultants. She said the report was harsh on leadership. I nodded. She said Coastal Horizons had been acquired by a national tourism chain at a steep discount. She said they only wanted the client list and office assets. I wasn't surprised. Coastal Horizons had been losing clients and talent for months. I asked about Ryan. She said he was still unemployed. She said his reputation in the industry was ruined. I hadn't spread my story widely, but I hadn't hidden it either. When people asked why I left Coastal Horizons, I told the truth. Sarah said she'd learned a lesson. She said she was now helping other companies avoid those mistakes. She asked if it was worth it, leaving quietly instead of fighting. I thought about my team at Palmetto, thriving and respected. I thought about the clients who followed us. I thought about my grandmother, who taught me to be steady. I said yes. I said the results spoke for themselves. A year after that email changed my career, Palmetto named me Vice President of Southeast Operations. My division was the company's star, efficient, innovative, with the highest employee satisfaction scores in the organization. All 6 of my team members had been promoted too. Nathan now led his own department. Lauren had revolutionized our campaign strategies and earned industry awards. The others had excelled, their talents finally appreciated. On the anniversary of my firing, I got a package in the mail. It was my seashell paperweight, with a note from Rachel Evans. She said she'd rescued it from my desk. She said she thought I'd want it back. She said Coastal Horizons was closing next week. I placed the paperweight on my windowsill, where it caught the sunlight. Like me, it had survived being cast aside and found a better place to grow. That evening, I drove to Folly Beach. My grandmother and I used to walk there, collecting shells as the waves rolled in. The sound of the ocean soothed me. I thought about how one cold email had led to greater success, not just for me, but for everyone who followed me. I whispered to the waves that my grandmother was right. I said sometimes you have to be steady and let the tides do their work. My revenge wasn't in destroying Coastal Horizons. My revenge was in building something better, a workplace where bereavement leave wasn't a lack of commitment, where people were valued beyond their output, where leadership meant empowering, not controlling. My grandmother would have been proud. Looking ahead, I felt gratitude for this journey, even the painful parts. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, if you stay steady like the tides.